people get deluded into thinking that the success of what they've done negates the need for them to reinvent and learn and adapt for something new. Oh, our decade was amazing. Oh, the older days were great. Yeah, because maybe that's what you knew and that's what you learned and that's what you could
Yes.
deliver.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Career Growth Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything related to growing your career. I'm your host, Kalis, and today we're going to be focusing on continuous learning and growth. You can't really rely on a finite set of skills and static practices throughout your career, or life for that matter. Whether you're just starting out or you're in a mid managerial position, or anywhere else in your career, adapting through continuous learning is extremely vital. But it's also important to remember that growth is rarely a linear path. With so many choices available, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and believe that you can master new skills quickly and effortlessly without really having any kind of like plan, or how do you say, being aware that you're actually learning. But to help us actually clarify what it means to continuously learn and grow is the latest addition to our team, Ajinkya, who is our senior operations manager. His life mission is to play a part in overhauling the current education system, about which we'll probably get into at a later date, because it is a fascinating story. But hi again. I know we were speaking for a little bit, but it's really early for Ajinkya right now. So thank you so much for joining us at 7 a.m. Really
Oh,
appreciate it.
the pleasure's all mine, Kilis. I know you'd pitched this idea to me many weeks ago, so we're finally down to connecting on it.
He's a very busy man, so this means a lot. Thank you for your time. But aside from that, how has your day been so far?
It's a nice day. The weather's fair. It's been a productive week. Um, so yeah, Friday morning, starting off with this stimulating conversation. It's a good day to have it.
Yeah, it is, and it's not too bad that we can look forward to the weekend afterwards as well. You know,
Oh yes, I think it's
TGIF
a
and
bank
whatnot.
holiday on Monday, or at least in here in the UK. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
That's nice because for us it's been like a 3 day holiday, public holiday where I'm from. So, uh, yeah, everything's been closed for a bit. I don't know if I'm so excited for the weekend. But yeah, so AJ is what we call Ajinkya over at CP, by the way. So AJ, we know you. We've known you for a few months now, but our audience does not. This is the first time they're meeting you. So let's kind of anchor you in their memories a bit. So tell us about your career journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Uh, Funny enough, there's not a direct line, so it's not a point A to point B journey. There's a lot of twists and turns along the way. I formally graduated as an accountant as well as a lawyer, and as cliche as it may sound, that led me to the corporate offices as I was in corporate consulting for the first couple of years of my career. Uh, at my first 90-degree turn, so to say, in trying out entrepreneurship, when you mentioned life mission about changing the education system, that's what my entrepreneurship venture was about. We wanted to experiment and see if we can inculcate a different mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset in young students. So we worked with middle school students. That was my venture. Uh, Taking all of that learning with the COVID break in between, reassessing my career, reaffirming what I've learned, in the real world as opposed to the corporate world side of things, I decided to enroll for an MBA education, and I was lucky enough to be granted a seat at Oxford. And post Oxford, through a series of events, I was enrolled in Amazon's leadership program. And after that, coming back to my life mission led me to exploring role at CP, where I am now working with the operations team.
Yep. And also, just want to throw it in there. AJ wrote a book. AJ wrote a book, and it's got a very interesting premise. So, AJ, do you want to quickly introduce your book?
Yeah, so this is around my accounting journey, right? So when I was on my accounting journey in India, the accounting degree is famous, rather, I say infamous, for having a quite low pass percentage almost always in single digits. It's being reworked now. I haven't looked at the stats in the last couple of years, but that's always how it's been. And because of it, there is this informal title of clearing the accounting exam in the first attempt. So when you clear your final accounting exam and you're a chartered accountant, the first thing that people will ask you is which attempt, how many attempts. I didn't clear in the first attempt, and I'm proud to say that I have no stigma about it. But when I was going through that journey, despite being always in the top 10 and top 5% of my class, when I stumbled at this hurdle, it sort of gave me a very, very realistic and empathetic viewpoint about what other accounting students and people in the past, present, and future might go through. And that's when it sparked an idea about, okay, why can't there be a acknowledgement of somebody who's taking many more attempts to clear the exam, because that speaks that A, they have the determination, B, they probably might know the subject better, and C, nowhere in our degrees does it say first or second attempt. It's only through human conversations. So I wanted to celebrate that moment, and I wanted to share with the others that if somebody has taken how many were attempts to become an accountant, that journey needs to be celebrated. So the book is on that premise, where there is a fictional organization. I hope at some point somebody has this organization, or if there will be, but that fictional organization publishes in the newspaper a listing that we only want accountants who've taken three or more attempts to clear their exam, and we want to hire them. And it goes on that it sort of challenges through a story form the conventional norms of success in the accounting profession. And it was very gratifying to write and share with my with my fellow accounting community. It's been received very well. We've sold over 2,000 copies, maybe more, but some of the reviews where students have written back and said this was, I remember vividly this review where someone said this was like an oasis in the desert that they were facing of continuously giving attempts, and it sort of re-energized them for the journey. That was very gratifying. But again, the thought process about
Yeah.
that is overhauling the mindset about education systems as how we have it today. So that's part of my, somewhere a chapter in this life mission that I want to I want to be a part of.
Yeah. And actually, I've been wanting to read this book for a while. It's been on my reading list, and I'm really excited about reading it myself because here's the thing. When we were discussing continuous growth and learning, you did already highlight how rigorous, like a structure, people try to pigeonhole continuous learning. It's pretty rigorous, and people try to approach it in a very linear way, because they treat it like there are these milestones that you absolutely have to reach within a certain period of time, or else you're a failure. And I feel like that might resonate with folks who've like read your book or sympathized with what you've been through as well, in accounting in particular. But in your own experience, how
Mhm.
would you define continuous learning, and why is it crucial to engage in self development and seek challenges early in your career?
Mm. That's it's a very, very good question, Kailas. First and foremost, right at the start, I'd like to say that there is a understanding that whenever you talk about learning and development, or continuous learning in this matter, the attention goes to a formal, structured education exercise, which culminates in either a degree or a diploma or a certificate. That's what comes to people's minds. Oh, continuous learning. So I need to sign up for a course, or I need to sign up for with an education institution. And while it's true, while that is learning, of course, but what I want to bring to you, or what I want to share, is that continuous learning can be across different parameters. It can be structured and unstructured. It can be formal and informal. It can be on the job, off the job. But most often, based on what I've just shared, it always ends up in the understanding of people that it needs to be structured, it needs to be formal, and it needs to be off the job, right? And then probably that's where they think about, okay, I need to sign up for something, therefore now I need to pay for something, now I need to commit to something, now I need to write a test for something. Those are all the aspects that come to mind when these things come in almost feels an extension of school, almost feels an extension of university. And that's why then people maybe pursue it, don't pursue it. But I want to broaden it. I want to bring about, these nuances about that it's informal, that it's off the job, that it can be unstructured. And that was also very crucial, these three pieces in my own career. Uh, writing a book. Uh, did I pursue any writing course for it? Am I a student of literature? Did I do anything formal, structured, on the job related to writing the book? The answer is no. I had an idea. I wrote the book. I had someone review it in terms of how it's sounding for a reader. When it felt all right, I continued writing it. Towards the end, when we got to the publishing stage, we just did a grammar check and we published it. So where was the piece of me being a formal author in it? Just to do it, because I tapped on the informal bits, I tapped on the unstructured bits, I tapped on the conversations I was having with some senior accountants about how they felt about the accounting journey. I tapped on what I saw when I was working in my consulting organization with fellow accountants, on how they felt, what their mood was when they didn't clear the exam, when they had to give an attempt again. All of that went into sort of my learning toolkit, which enabled me to write this book. Those were also similar pieces that enabled me to jump into my
Yeah.
entrepreneurial journey. Uh, but so, setting that out there, or setting this platform right now where let's look at continuous learning from these multiple points of view, these multiple perspectives, and not just, pigeonhole it, as you said, into just something that's structured and a formal piece of learning that you need to do.
Yeah. And I think that's a very healthy approach as well, because as we've seen, even in other fields, right, of even in other parts of our life, there's always this sort of this, either the qualitative or the quantitative. We rarely experience the two together, and if something is not highly technical, people tend to place little less value to it. So when there's structure, it's usually viewed as good, and unstructured is usually, it has a negative connotation added to it. But a lot of what we
I
learn in
I
life
correct you
is,
here, Kayla. Sorry to break you. Rather than a negative connotation, I'd go one step further to say unstructured learning is misunderstood. Unstructured learning is, not recognized, and there is what's the word that I'm coming for? There's an acute sense of ignorance about unstructured learning.
I mean, that's pretty fair. It's pretty fair for something that comprises most of what humanity learns in their lifetime. Because a lot of the knowledge, and from that, the wisdom that we gain, comes from these informal experiences, a lot of stuff that we absorb like sponges, basically. So it's kind of weird that something that's unstructured or informal would be considered lesser than. But aside from these dynamics that need to coexist for continuous learning to be optimal, what is your approach? Do you have like a special approach to continuous growth in your career?
Uh, I think reflection and realistic assessment. You need to step away from the comfort of where you are at the start of your career, or what you've learned in your formal or structured learning, right? A realistic assessment and awareness about where you stand. And I feel a lot of people don't do that. See, let's loop it, right? Like, where does the need analysis come in, and how I've looked at how I've approached it, or I've seen other people also approach it when I've asked questions, my peers or my seniors, when they look at when they look at continuous learning. They say you gotta take a step back, and you got to sometimes acknowledge that you may not know what you may not know. Number one. Therefore, no matter how successful you were at completing your degree, or no matter how successful you were in delivering your last project, that is your last degree and that's your last project. It starts all over again for the next project or the next role that you want to do. So having that humility and that practical, realistic outlook to take that step back and say, okay, I delivered this, but what I knew and my knowledge pool for delivering this previous project, this previous task, may or may not be sufficient for the next project or next task. And approaching everything with that level of vulnerability, if I may so put it, it's a strong word, but I'll still say that, if you feel that I may or may not be able to do so well in the next task, or how can I do myself better, that's where the assessment kicks in. Then you start reflecting. That becomes your starting point as to then understand, okay, what do I need to learn, what do I need to do better. If I have to give an example as a context, I may have delivered a brilliant presentation with amazing analysis, and everybody's happy, the clients, the seniors. But when you've come to the next project, if you reflect back, and if you one of the feedbacks from the client was maybe that the presentation, was too detailed, maybe it didn't have a certain perspective. There could be just some feedback, but overall it was great and everyone celebrated the success. More often than not, people bask in that success. They want to be, I mean, we're humans, we like to, feel good. We like to know that we've done a good job. We don't want to admit that, oh, I have not done a good job when we've done a good job, you know so it's in those moments that if you're able to be equanimous, that yes, I have done a good job, but let me just take an assessment. Okay, these were the things that I maybe took time on, or this was the client's feedback, why has that come in, let me sort of reanalyze, how can I work on that better for my next task, for my next presentation, for my next project. How can I plug these gaps, what were the gaps? The moment you take that step back and you start reassessing and asking these questions, that's when your starting point of continuous learning comes in. Because if you feel that you know it, and if you don't know what you don't know, and you're in this space of, I'm doing perfectly fine, the need's not going to kick in. And if the need's not going to kick in, then you're not going to take any action on it. So, therefore, taking the example of the book, when I wrote the first chapter and I showed it for review, I got feedback. I understood. Okay, this is what is missing. I wrote a second time. That first chapter that I wrote, I must have gone through 6 or 7 iterations for it before I got the tone of how this the flow of the narrative should be. Then I could expand it to other chapters. When I was first in my job, my presentation skills, I vividly remember I had done a
Yeah.
very colorful presentation, and I gave it to one of my seniors, and he said, okay, this is not going to cut it in our corporate world. I had used very bold colors and I had made it a very college presentation. And then he sat me down and he said, look, we have templates in the organization. Why don't you study these templates? He gave me 4 other presentations that he had worked on. And he said, do your same presentation now with these other templatized styles and go back and do it. And I did it. And after even delivering it and going back and showing him, okay, something else that I've done, I understood I need to be very proficient at it. I need to know how to do this better in the next environment. So on my side, I would spend about 15-20 minutes redoing 1 or 2 slides all the time in different templates, just on the side, just for the fun of it. And that reward paid off, because the next time I got another presentation task, I knew exactly, okay, how does the structure look like, how I can present this better, how it would be looking at a professional standards. I didn't rely again on, okay, did it one time, got the feedback, corrected it, thank you very much. No, I'm taking the task based view here, Kailas, about doing the presentations. I took, another view of about how I wrote the book. If I was to take, more skilling as well, I had signed up for, now we're going a little bit into the structured part of it, but I understood that accounting degree didn't give us a lot of financial modeling knowledge. And I thought, okay, how do I get it? I just simple Google search, and there was some weekend courses on just Excel, advanced skills. I signed up for it. So these were the ways I did it. Did somebody ask me to do this? No.
Yeah.
But I felt, okay, I'm getting these Excel sheets. I don't understand. I'm sitting next to some people who are very fast. They're just clicking, doing formulas, and just like jumping cells. I was sit with somebody else who was extremely slow. So I got both the sides of it, and I said, okay, I want to learn how to do this better. But at every point, if I was stuck, or if anybody else that I saw who was doing well, did they stop and think, I know it all? I know what I'm doing, and my previous work speaks for it. I don't therefore need to learn, or there's nothing more that I need to do. I just need to deliver project after project because I am perfect at it. I didn't see this attitude in those who were successful in the workplace, and I emulated that, and I tried to see if they can do it at the level of success that they are. Then that means maybe that's something that I should pick up, and that's what I'd like to share with fellow listeners, is to, you've done great, fantastic. That also doesn't mean jump and beat yourself up and be negative about yourself. So let's not jump to extremes. That's why I use the word equanimous. Equanimous is being quite stable in both success as well as in failure. Take that step back at whichever point you are in your career, or even if you're starting, and every task that you do, every project that you do, that's an opportunity for you to see if there is a scope of continuous learning there. It could be structured, unstructured, formal, or it could be the other way. But those points of testing, where you need it, how much you need it, in what format you need it, these points will only be visible if you stop and look.
True. And to be quite honest, I feel like when you're starting out, the skill gap between you and more experienced coworkers and other professionals in the industry is very, very stark. So it's a lot easier to identify what you need to learn. So even for you, it was easy for you to compare with your colleague and see, oh, I want to be doing that. I want to know how to do it better because this person can do this. So you have like a benchmark there. But I feel like the longer you are in a certain field, like the longer you are in a career, in your career, you tend to like you tend to kind of balance things out over time. Things become less stark and less visible. So in this kind of a situation, do you believe, like, I don't really see, well, a very big difference between me and folks who are like my age or my level when it comes to something as simple as writing a press release, for example. I feel like we've kind of maxed out on that. But I feel like as I grow older, there's going to be a difference. There's going to be a significant difference, but I'm not going to be able to see it, like with what the younger generation and me, what we're capable of, right? And so for me, my main concern is, at every stage, how much should I invest in continuous learning? How important is it for me and people like me to, continue to focus on continuous learning and growth?
Absolutely bang on, right? Press release. Simple question. How were press releases done in the 1980s, in the 1990s, in 2000s, 2010, and now 2020? So 5 decades, right? Same task, objective is the same. We got to share with the world a formal piece of communication and update about something that we're doing in the organization or wherever. Like, that's broadly, um, people from the journalism field, please don't butcher me for getting the definition wrong. I'm not trying to define or redefine it, but broadly that's what it is. Uh, how does it look like in the last 5 decades? I don't think it looks the same. I don't
It
think the
doesn't. It
medium's been
doesn't. I mean,
exactly
I
right.
used to be a copywriter, and for me, back in the day, like, okay, to be like clear, Sri Lanka kind of gets everything a couple of years later, so we're a bit behind. So in the older decades, you would have seen more Neil French-esque Sugarman, like long copy, long articles for PR, right? Unless it's like a brief shout out, but that's not considered a PR article. But there were changes in tone, the way the details are communicated, the structure of it, everything became, it became shorter, clearer, it's succinct, and the distribution of information is also different, but it was a very gradual change. Like it was super super gradual, right? So you wouldn't notice until you actually compare, like, oh hey, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what did it look like?
But my point here will be that there will be somebody who would have formally trained, in journalism or in marketing, and they would have started their job in the 1980s, and their career would have transitioned into 1990s. If they still could worked, towards the peak of their career, they would have been in 2000s. Similarly, there will be somebody who probably started working in got qualified in 1990, and then mid career is 2000s, peak of their career 2010. Like if I'm taking 30-year, 3-decade overview. Let's just talk about, the transition from 90s to 2000s, and the current year. Let's just go from print to digital, and then from digital to, social media kind of domain, Twitter, where you've gone from newspaper columns and you've gone from online blogs to now, Twitter 140 characters,
Yeah.
right? uh,
We're seeing like traditional PR pieces dying anyway. Like social media is where it's at.
so the point will be, what does that person do? Does that person give up and say, that's it, I can't do this anymore, this isn't what I've done? If you ask around, most of the people would have said, yeah, they'll have a negative view about it. By all means, they'll say, yeah, technology and it's killed the skill and it's killed the art. I'm not going into that debate right now. That's not what we're talking about. But that's what I alluded to earlier, where people get deluded into thinking that the success of what they've done negates the need for them to reinvent and learn and adapt for something new. Oh, our decade was amazing. Oh, the older days were great. Yeah, because maybe that's what you knew and that's what you learned and that's what you could deliver. When external circumstances have changed and you're not able to match it, it's very easy to blame external factors and then look internal, right? So to the stages of your career, you can be at any stage, and this is one example where the importance shines through, and we're taking the analogy of press releases, or we're talking about how media and marketing has sort of changed when we're doing this narrative. You don't need to. You could, if you want to go and do a course. Somebody, some writer may have said, I want to learn how to create my own blog. I want to sign up for a course and see how do I make, my website. There's Blogspot at some point of time. People could have probably gone into WordPress and learned how to do their own website. Some people could have gone into and understood, okay, how to do digital marketing. Let me understand how Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, how do I write for it? How do I make it more catchy? They could have done formal courses for it. They could have done informal, ways about it. They could have experimented. But each of these attempts is continuous learning.
Yeah. True. True.
And each of these non-attempts is not continuous learning. It's, if you distill it down, is as simple as that. So at any stage, your need, again, like I said, it could be internal, that we initially spoke about. How could I deliver this better? It could be
Yeah.
spurred on by external change of circumstances. And to be honest, Kalis, that is happening much more faster than internal. Um,
Why is that?
so the linearity between what somebody needs to know to get the next promotion, I think that is a slightly more, less. Let me put it this way: like the curve on it is less steep, is more flatter. Then I'd say the curve for changes in external factors and variables requiring you to relearn and rethink and understand your job. So forget about taking the promotion. How do I become from an operations manager to a senior operations manager? That's one part of learning piece which is there. But I'd say it's coming to a point where what you're doing as an operations manager I'm speaking about me, or any job, is that job even going to be around? And if that job is not going to be around, what are you getting promoted for? So, in the very task that you're doing, if that task or the nature of role is at its existential crisis, then, you know, it would be foolish to still think, how do I become a senior at this if that very role is not going to be there in the future? It's more prudent and wise to think, okay, if this role is not going to be there or it's going to be done differently, then let me try and, jump and be in that line. Let me be in that queue rather than be in this queue because this counter is going to close. If I've taken a queuing analogy,
Yeah.
you're standing in a line waiting to go up, but that counter is going to close. You need to change your line because, something else is going to come up. We've I'm not a tech person. I'm not from the tech background, but enough conversations or reading around, look at the tech field of how it's changed. Look at how our computers were in the 1990s. I am from the Windows 95 generation. I remember, actually, even before that, MS-DOS. That's when my first time I my experience with the computer. And then we went from that to Windows, and then from Windows we moved on and on and on, and then we had Apple, and it became more mainstream, and then smartphones and iOS and then Android. So even as a developer, for somebody who was maybe very proficient at coding in a environment where Windows and Linux was, the the main market technology, not necessarily that those same skills are can be used in a exact way for making apps on a mobile phone. They would need to have gone through some bits of learning. They could have had transferable skills, but they would need to be that bit of, uh, learning and upskilling and the skill gap piece when it had come to jumping from what they knew to what they need to do with the external variables and circumstances. So, just to summarize, if I'm catching my thoughts, we've spoken broadly on it, but I'm distilling out, right? You can be at any stage of your career, and that reflection piece, rather than internal, needs to be proactively taken externally to ask the question: the role that I'm doing right now, is it going to be done the same way in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years? And if the answer to that is no, that's your inflection point for then starting your continuous learning journey if you want to start it.
I'm sure there are folks who definitely need to start it out there. So this might be a wake up call from AJ. But I'm really glad that you brought up the technological progress as well. And also, the question that's on a lot of people's minds these days is whether their roles will exist down the line 4 years, 5 years down the line, whether it'll be there. So, which takes us to our first Reddit story of this episode, which is quite relevant actually. So this particular Redditor spoke about how they realized why constantly learning new technologies is such a virtue in their field. So they said, I always thought that the fact that we always have to learn new technologies and tools was good, just for some very general reason, having to do with keeping up to date and keeping oneself in shape and keeping sharp in terms of learning how to learn. While in a meeting wherein there was a discussion about totally ditching our tech stack and bringing a lot of new tools, along with a lot of enthusiasm among the teams for the change. I realized that the real reason it's a virtue to move to new stuff is probably, at least in part, the fact that things decay and get stale and hard to use with time. And so, more than anything, it represents a chance at a fresh start. It's more about moving away from stifling old stuff than moving to new stuff in its own right. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I couldn't agree more. Give me the username of this Redditor. I want to reach out and say thank you for pointing it out in such a, plain, simple English manner, and saying the thing that's obvious. I think
Yeah.
deep down, careless people are maybe aware, right? They understand. It's not like people are not aware of the virtue of continuous learning, but it's just that maybe they're lazy about it. maybe they feel they don't need it. Maybe they want to really get in that adrenaline and sense of urgency before they start doing something. uh, there's a concept, I may be getting it wrong, but it's like the brain is a cognitive miser. So in the sense that we're programmed to basically, in terms of efficiency, do things that require less and less like effort and energy. it's
Yeah.
it's sort of a it's sort of a way of like being more efficient at what we're doing. That's how reflex actions just come up, right? Because once it becomes a reflex, you're actually thinking and spending less time on processing it internally. That's how we're wired. Maybe that's part of, like, that's why people don't want to do it. um but they've put it across so well, and I can't disagree. I'm happy that they've spoken about technology, because that was what we were speaking about leading into it. um, but just one bit I'd like to comment on this part is, where does sometimes the disconnect comes in for people who are, very passionate about learning and are engaging in continuous learning, is when they don't see a correlation or a return in an outcome form for continuous learning. Um, so what I'm saying is, you if you have a transactional approach to continuous learning, the chances of you being disappointed are higher, and the chances of you being disconnected are greater, because you might do something with a point of view that I'm going to learn and I'm going to upskill, and therefore this is going to help me get here and get there, and that might be your starting point and hypothesis. And let's say that doesn't happen, then in your head you've registered that activity as, I did something but it didn't give me something. So what's the point? So the next time that opportunity comes up, you're going to now filter it, or you're going to have this layer of context on it, that last time I did the same exercise, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So is it even worth putting my effort? Then you start doubting it, then you start reassessing it, and you get even more critical about the whole process of continuous learning, when maybe the outcome is not as per your expectations. That's why i'd I'd push, or I'd say, recognize that this is normal, this is how we think, and we're wired to think this way. We're wired to sort of, we're conditioned rather than wired. Conditioned is a better, we're conditioned to learn and adapt, right? So the learning for continuous learning should not be that I should not do it. You can't say, okay, the moral of the story here is I did it, it didn't work, so I'm not going to do it. If you have, that single minded transactional approach, it's going to completely question the notion of continuous learning, and disconnect and, dissuade people from engaging it in the first place.
That's entirely true. And I agree with you as well. But just one thing that I would like to just kind of add to that is that, yes, it's entirely possible that our brain just enjoys not expending effort. But on the other hand, we have executive dysfunction, which is a very real problem. But in order to get through that, you kind of need to get past that reliance on the adrenaline, that initial rush that you get when you like need to start a project.
It's funny, whichever way you look at it, but I think, you know keep it simple. I'm bringing in a little bit of philosophy here, just to also add.
Yeah.
There was a
Well,
survey,
all
I think,
things lead to philosophy.
for me, unfortunately, yes, I like dabbling in it a little bit, learning
Ooh,
or reading about it.
next
uh,
episode.
but no, I'd read when I was doing like a little bit of reading around this. There was a line that came across to me, that, people who engage in continuous learning also have a, happier work life. And I remember reading about ikigai also some time back, quite a popular book and a practice that, gained a lot of awareness, where you need to have a purpose, and if you have a purpose, then there is, a higher chance of you being generally more happy or generally being more satisfied in life. And a lot of times, an average person's lifespan about 60s or 65 when they retire from their formal jobs, if they don't have a next purpose. So they were looking at, in that book, they spoke about how people in Japan, even in their post retirement age, they might pick up a hobby of bonsai, tree cultivation, um, doing the rock gardens outside, and they might continuously learn how to do it better, and that keeps them engaged and that gives them a little bit of purpose. So I'm not opening that up, but just touching upon the fact that there is also that bit of, I mean, you want to talk about outcomes, right? I know this is not measured and it might not, like, reflect in, we're talking about the transactional approach, but I'd like to throw in this bit as well to those points, that
Yeah.
even if maybe in that transactional way it's not contributed to your immediate growth in salary or immediate job prospects, you've done a course, you felt this course is amazing, that certificate might get you the next job, and maybe it's not. You've done something and you felt this skill I'm going to use, and I'm ready for the next project, but you've not got such a project where you've got to demonstrate those skills. Um, but there's enough research and there's enough conversation about the fact that these exercises actually lead you internally to be more um, happier, to feel a sense of achievement. So it has that angle to it as well, and not to underestimate it. Now again, if you're going to have a transactional approach about happiness and say I was feeling this happy yesterday, and if you quantify it and say I need to feel 20% happier now that I've done this continuous learning and it's not working out, then there's no end to it. You can keep going round and round. But what I'm essentially trying to appeal to people is to say that rather than look at it from an outcome standpoint, or in addition, this is a better way to put it, in addition to look at what will be the outcome from it, please also focus that the process of continuous learning is definitely adding and contributing to a lot of how you are developing as a person. And in what I read so far, in what I know so far, there has not been a stark statement in these words that learning, and therefore continuous learning, makes you stressed or makes you unhappy or makes you miserable. So, this nowhere have I come across. Maybe if anybody else from our readers has come across a statement exactly like this, or there is research, I'm happy to learn, but, and again, learn about it. But from what I read so far, it only speaks that there is a positive
Yeah.
contribution to us
Yeah.
rather than it taking us backwards.
Yeah. I think a lot of that also comes from the fact that people are, if anyone is annoyed about continuous learning, it's probably because there are underlying causes like poor time management or, other things in your life that are stressful that are kind of making it seem like continuously learning and putting in that effort is a burden rather than a boon, and which is really unfortunate. But here's the thing: we've spoken about actually doing the learning and growing, but in order to do that, especially if, for people who are just starting out, they can be students, graduates, interns. For them, I think the hardest part would be identifying their skills gap, the current skills gap between what they know, what they can do, and what the industry expects. So, what's the fastest way or the easiest way they can identify the expectations to start with? What soft skills or hard skills? How can they kind of like understand what the industry needs right now, or what they need to start learning?
LinkedIn And any job portal is a fantastic way to know where the industry is going. If you're doing a job, you say you're a copywriter, um, or if you are a web developer, as a software developer, whatever role you're doing, keep going to the job portals, and see advertisements, listings for similar roles. And every time you look at it, look at what is expected, what is the job description and expectation, and what are the requirements. And keep an eye on whether the job that you're doing right now, you're already doing it, but whatever listings coming up, can you successfully apply for those jobs? At any point
Yeah.
of time, if you feel this is the same job that I'm doing, but now the requirements change, they require me to understand, um, you know, social media marketing. And
Yeah.
if you've never done that before, or if you're doing it in the organization as it's picked it up, but it's not on your CV, you're not informally trained on it. So that, if you see new skills and new requirements and new outcomes being expected of a similar role that you are currently doing, that's your easiest and fastest way to hit the pause button and think, okay, this is where the industry seems to be going. Should I therefore invest in plugging that gap? Simplest way.
Yeah.
We've seen that in account. The example that I gave you, financial modeling,
Yeah.
it comes from this exercise.
Right.
I have had very stark feedback in an interview given to me. That wasn't an interview, it was a client presentation meeting. I don't know. Somebody said that, yes, but you're an accountant. You wouldn't know financial projection and financial modeling. And that was it. And it felt like a slap on my face. And it wasn't said negatively or rudely. It was a passing comment in the conversation, and he was right. We're accountants, right? So in accounting, we need to understand the accounting principles. We need to understand the journalizing side of it. We probably need to understand tax bit of it. Financial projections and management is something that's like with more of a finance specific degree. Finance is a component, yes. Numbers, accounting, there is overlap, but he was right. And that was my trigger for, okay, let me sign up for that financial modeling course, which I was doing on the weekends. So it's as simple as that. If I'm doing something today, go on the job portals, see similar jobs, see what is required, what is expected, and see the outcomes, or what you need to do and what they require. And
Yeah.
that's your fastest answer to whether you need to invest in upskilling or plugging that gap.
Okay. I've got a scenario for you. Let's utilize this advice that you provided, these steps, in this scenario. So if you were to realize, oh, hey, okay, I don't really like what I'm doing right now. I don't like being a senior operations manager. I want to rethink my career. Now I need to upskill for it. So you have 2 years to do this. And what would you do? How would you approach it?
One part of the approach is what I just said right now. Second part of the approach is to almost do a role play. Do it with yourself, do it with a friend, do it literally, or do it in your imagination. But think of that you've been invited to that interview for whatever that role it is. So I'm a senior operations manager right now, for example, and let's say I want to become a film director. I want to go into filmmaking. Okay. I'm purposely taking it, a little offbeat to drive home the point. Okay, if I'm going to go to that interview, so someone's going to ask me, okay, so you want to be a filmmaker, why should we hire you? What work have you done? How well can you do this job? That's going to be the first question. If someone's kind enough to still invite me for the interview, so the first thing I need to understand is, okay, why will somebody even invite me on the interview? That means they've seen something on my CV, because without that, nobody's going to even call to talk to me to understand anything more about why I want to make this move. Okay, so I need something on the CV that's going to be interesting enough for somebody to invite me for the interview. So therefore, what do I need to do on the CV? Okay, I could maybe pursue, like I said, look at the job descriptions. Is there some specific skills that they require? Is that available in the market for me right now? Can I learn it? Is there a course? Is it doable? Is it feasible? That's first analysis. If I find some short course on filmmaking, Udemy, okay, starting point. At least it's better than you don't have anything. At least on paper, I have now a new bullet point to put on my CV, which increases my chances that much bit for somebody to say, here's an accountant who's in operations. Oh, but he's done this course on short filmmaking. Okay, interesting. Maybe that's why he wants to do this. Okay, perhaps that increases my chances from the point of if he reads my CV as an accountant only operations manager. First point, formal, structured. Second point is, what is the informal? What is the unstructured? Have more conversations. That's where LinkedIn, comes in. Find out people who are in that field. If you want to go one step beyond and do research, find out, see the profiles and career trajectories of people who've been in that field and maybe are also having a non-linear journey. There might be
Yeah.
somebody who is into filmmaking. Maybe their background was not filmmaking. These are your classic examples of models you want to emulate. Pick up the conversation, drop them a message, and okay, fine.
Engage.
People
Like
don't
there are
again.
forums online, and
Exactly right. So find these people, and try to speak to them. How did you make that career switch? How did you go from being in a non-filmmaking background to a filmmaking background? How
yeah,
much time did it take? How hard was the journey? How easy was the journey? What did you do? What were your learnings? Again, you can pick this up vicariously by reading blogs or understanding. You can pick this up actively if you reach out to these people and they're kind enough to entertain that conversation. So these are the two advices. There's much more, but broadly I'd say, try and imagine, okay, if I need to be called for that interview, or I need someone to pick me up seriously for that opportunity, then these are the points at which they're going to look at. How do I plug those gaps, and how do I add to those points are in these ways. And that's how I'd start it.
right.
Because again, it's rather than look at it. Okay, I'll put it this way, right?
You,
Continuous learning, and we're
oh,
talking
the
about
glasses
transactional
came
value.
off. Also, this is serious, guys.
Yeah, I'll say, rather than barter for a guaranteed outcome, I'd say play the game of increasing your chances. Play the game of increasing your odds. Don't play the game of, I'm not going to do this if there's no guarantee that this is going to work. Because trust me, if life was that easy, generally for anything where there was that much level of direct predictive correlation between I do this and I get this, the whole world would look differently. So okay, there's no 100%. What's the chance? What are, even despite doing this, again, that transactional bit, even despite doing this, what if I don't get it? Yeah, but you're increasing your chances of getting it by investing in all of this. Rather, let me put it this way: there is a guarantee, there is a certainty to it, and the guarantee and certainty is zero if you do nothing about it, right?
True.
um, are people not aware of this? Yes, they are, but I'm re-emphasizing and reiterating it in this context
Yeah.
as well.
So the thing about the thing about this particular situation is the fact that I think a lot of people have to grapple with just the magnitude of what is there to learn out there, and I think that can be itself a bit overwhelming. And there is a lot of demands in the workplace that you, especially in the tech industry, I'd say, that you must constantly, daily, every single day actively sit down and learn. When I used to work in a tech company, there were times when they had learning sessions where they would just like three or four, maybe they'll break off into groups. They just sit at the computer and for about 2 hours in the evening, after, not after work, but later in the evening, they sit down and they learn. So it's kind of like they have to be on the ball with it a lot. And I don't really think there is much acknowledgement right now about just how overwhelming and scary it could be for people who don't know where to start. Because when you are an intern or a student now, when I like as after college, when I entered the workforce, I genuinely had no clue what I wanted to do. I didn't know how workplaces function. I didn't know about the organizational hierarchy. I wasn't aware about my workers rights, benefits, nothing. These are all things that you learn usually passively, unfortunately, by working. So if I were to take us a
Do you,
few.
Rana? Do you? Does anyone even learn passively? I have my doubts on that because they're quite, like I said, they're in that realm of ignorance about the value of even passive learning. But
That's
go
yeah,
ahead,
it's true.
Kels.
It's true. I mean, like I wasn't even aware until like someone asked me a question and I'm able to answer it, and I have to think back and where did I pick this up from? Oh, that conversation I had with Vinay over our intro call like 5 months ago. That's where. Because it's again, it links back to the whole being aware of what you're actually learning. It's kind of important, but let's take it back a few years, because right now we did talk about in this scenario, with the knowledge that you have right now, how you could progress, how you could sort of switch career, how you could upskill. But if you were in a very much junior position, let's put you in that position, you've just started out, and there's a chance that you really don't know much about the field. You're very, very new. So what would your next steps be to ensure professional growth and avoid stagnation in that role?
It may, I don't have any silver bullet here, and people may feel what this is like staple stuff, but I'll still repeat it, and
It's
I'll say
okay, we aren't werewolves.
I'll
it's
try to
it is
I'll
a
try
full
to
moon though today.
I'll try to give a different perspective on it, or I'll rephrase it, right? You just started off. Okay, we've already spoken about looking at the same job, how it will be. That's reflection. But in your organization, if whatever is the hierarchy, yes, we did speak about, okay, whether the job's going to stay there or not, and all of those, we spoke on larger points. But on a day-to-day point of view, whoever you're working with, whichever position you see that is next in line, um, that's input number one. Second is day-to-day conversations that you're having with your team and how you're performing on those jobs. That's input number two. And the third point I'd say is even your performance reviews that are happening. Performance reviews happen half yearly in most organizations, so that's your input number three. So these three inputs, if you are able to go back at the end of your day, at the end of your week, and reflect why these 3 points. One, what did I do? How much did I struggle in it? Two, my immediate senior or the position, how did he or she do it? What do they know? Or how are they doing it better than me? Or how are they doing it faster than me? And third is, okay, what feedback was I given in my formal or informal evaluation? These 3 points are very, very crucial, that you are true to yourself when you are having these self conversations. At the end of the week, I'd say do it, make it a weekly exercise. Don't even make it monthly, make it a weekly exercise. I'm not pushing it to say daily, but yes, there are people who also journal every day, and one of the questions in the journal is, what have I done differently today, or what have I learned today? So not that there's
Yeah,
not that this is not being done. There are enough people doing and talking about the virtues of journaling, and this
yeah.
question is actually one of it. But I'd say, okay, start off with a timeline of 1 week. Okay, in that 1 week, reflect back on whatever work that you did at your workplace, and see, was there any point of in that you got feedback? Was there any point that you saw somebody else or your senior or a team member doing something differently, something faster, something better, that made you uh, feel, oh, okay, made you conscious? That's a trigger. And third is, what's internal? How did you feel in that week when you were able to deliver it? Did it feel like a struggle for you? Did it feel easy for you? Were you challenged? Were you not challenged? Have these questions
Yeah.
as a review, and they will serve as a trigger for your continuous learning.
Yeah.
Like I said right at the beginning, it needn't be it needn't be structured and formal. It can be unstructured. It can be something that's also not like in a degree. For example, people management, stakeholder management. Okay, how do I communicate my difficulties or my challenges, and how do I earn trust of my supervisor
Yeah.
and be able to share that I am taking time to develop something, or I'm not being able to complete the task, as per his requirements. I'm struggling.
Yeah.
How do I build trust and have this conversation? Should I do it with my supervisor? Should I do it with a peer? Should I do it with HR? This is also part of learning.
Yeah.
What are you learning? Stakeholder management and relationship building, right? So learning again always needn't
Soft skills.
be
Yeah. Super
soft
important.
skills learning, exactly. uh, how to ask for feedback. You've gone through the week and you've realized it's been flat. You've done the work, you've given it, your supervisor or the client has said okay, thank you, and that's it. You've not got that feedback. How to ask for feedback, that is a piece of learning. Oh, okay, this is how I can ask for feedback. This is how I can set up a session with someone and say, please sit with me. Can I understand more? Even that is a skill, soft skill, which you can learn.
Yeah.
And there's
Giving
one interesting.
feedback too. Like giving feedback can also help.
Exactly. Exactly, Kailas. I was just coming to it.
Yeah.
A lot of learning also happens when you teach. Teaching is the biggest learning exercise.
Yep. Agreed.
So giving feedback as well, right? So the exact activity, if you are in a position now, where you have an intern report, you're an associate, but you have an intern working with you. You've never had somebody work for you before, right? uh, how to give feedback, how to teach better, how to explain better, that also is a skill. Have you done that? What are ways to do it? How can you try to do it better? I'm not I'm on the points of, again, the assessment of what to do next and how to go about it. I'm not yet going to the solutions. Okay, therefore now you go here and you learn like this. But I'd say, to your question of I'm new in my job, the answer is this: that have those weekly reflections through these points, internal
Yeah.
point, a peer point, and maybe any formal feedback. And through those reflections you will spot those elements of where those gaps are,
Yeah.
and then take the next step. Once you've identified the gaps, okay, how can I plug it? Sometimes plugging that gap is as simple as observing somebody do it. Sometimes it's a little bit more formal, that okay, I need to sign up for a course or go on YouTube and just look at an online video for maybe an hour. The solutions for the gaps could be varied and various, but if you don't know what the gap is, the solution is irrelevant.
Yep.
So yeah.
That is true. That's completely true. But just to like touch on one more point, I think as important as it is to be aware, I was in a seminar and it was basically about social media and its impacts on mental health. And one person, one attendee, shared with the group that what they do is when they're on social media, they're going through it. They found that they were doing something called doom scrolling. Are you familiar with the term? Yeah. So doom scrolling, so continuously, endlessly going through it, and it was really impacting them in a really bad way. But then was this? They found that the only thing that brings them some kind of peace and joy is watching TikToks where people explain things in a very simple way that they previously found very complicated. But they found that they could not retain that information, especially because when you're like getting an influx of information at once, it kind of erases quite a chunk of it in order to make room in your brain. So what this did was they got a notebook and started jotting down a thing that they learn from this video. It's sort of like, oh, what did I learn today during my social media thing? Is like how to use a cheesecloth and milk to make mozzarella cheese. So, something like that. And it's just something that, makes you feel a little bit more fulfilled and makes that passive act a lot more thoughtful. And I think that's also something that my father taught me, because he loves languages. And when he used to travel a lot, he used to carry a notebook with him where he would just write down phrases and the meanings of it. And he just kind of learned it. And this was before the internet. So, because my dad's old. Okay. It was before the internet. So he used to carry that around. He used to tell me, whenever you hear people speaking, always like write it down, because people are more receptive when you speak their language. And yeah, so that's just another way that you could kind of be more, involved in the learning process,
You've
with yourself.
you've absolutely nailed it, because learning process ends or is only complete or is only effective when there is reinforcement of what you've learned.
True,
There
true.
now there is it's learning theory that if you don't reinforce it, the learning will what you've learned will um, deteriorate. You will forget. So reinforcement is absolutely the necessary bit to any learning. And what you've
Absolutely.
said right now, all of those things, if you observe someone in your workplace, if you observe something that you see on social media on doom scrolling, through doom scrolling, if you found languages, any of these activities, so you've done the gap assessment, or that's one piece. Second piece is, okay, these are part of, like, okay, how can I do it better? These are solutions, or this is learning. And the third piece I'd say to our listeners is, please invest in converting that passive to active. Please engage in it. So
Absolutely.
what you've observed your supervisor doing, try to emulate that in your next project, next activity, next task. Do it, engage in it. If it is something that you've seen on YouTube, on TikTok, on Twitter, on Facebook, anybody giving a life hack, okay, do it, try it out and see for yourself. Languages, when I dabbled and I signed up for Spanish, that was the first thing that our Spanish teacher said, that we can give you the textbook and we can give you the audio guides, and we can, now you have Google Translate, you have all the tools in the world, but you're not going to be able to pick up a language until and unless you speak it, and listen to it. And she gave us the example of, how did we pick up our mother tongue? Nobody taught us when we were kids. We didn't go through formal to learn our mother tongue. If we rewind back to when we were 2 or 3 years old, how did we start speaking our mother tongue? It's just because we were actively engaged in listening to our family members, and we're repeating, and we're part of the process, and we just learned it. Like, that's it's a fascinating insight. Um, so you have to invest in activating and reinforcing whatever it is that you are learning, in order for you to retain it, and in order for you to really be effective, at it. Otherwise, it's again going to be
Yeah.
a lost cause.
This is so true. And just in order to help folks out who are currently struggling with this issue, where they don't even know how to tackle this, or how to tackle this influx of information that they have, and tools out there, because to be fair, there are a lot of learning options online and offline, and there's tools that they could use, different types of AI, and so many free tools online, whether it's Canva, you could even have free courses. There's so many options, but how do you even pick the ones that are right for you? Like, how do you pick the right source? How do you pick the right tool? It can be pretty overwhelming. So what advice would you give them?
Experiment. Free
It's
trials, that's why
Frankenstein.
free trials work. um yeah, there is no right size, fits all. Every tool, look, think of it this way, right? Every solution that's out there, somebody's trying to sell it, and therefore they are going to say that this is the perfect one for you. You are only going to know when you give it a try. uh look at I mean, look at your mundane activities. When you go to buy a shoes or t-shirt, do you buy just based on the window display, or do you go inside the shop, wear it, see how it feels, walk around a little bit? Oh, okay, the shoes a little bit too tight. Oh, okay, this is comfortable. Oh, this is not as supportive as I wanted. Like, I'm just talking about like shoes. How much experimentation do you do before you make your purchase? Yes, agreed. Even after you buy it on your long term, there might be things that change, but I'm not talking about that. I'm saying when you're doing that point of that purchase, you are trying things out, right? T-shirts, clothes, trousers, you try it on and see, okay, how does it fit you? Do the same thing for any online piece. And
Yeah,
right now we're talking
absolutely.
about all the online tools, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Offline
squarely
also
squarely
there's so much, but
offline as well.
yeah, online is just proliferated.
I'm keeping it with that domain. If it's an online course, if you don't want to commit, try to find those that have refunds. Try to find those that have free trials. That's your best friends. Most of them have it because they want you to try it and make use of it. Do those 14-day, 7-day trials. See how it feels before you commit to it. If it's an offline course, inquire with them. Okay, can I opt out? Can I pay only for 1 month? What is the escape clause? How can I end this if I don't like this? Refrain. Try to stay away from. No one's stopping you, but I'm saying if you're not sure, wouldn't it be better to go in for something which is reversible rather than pay something which is non-refundable, and it's a high value investment that you're doing to learn something? Try to
Yeah.
stay away from those so that you're more flexible about it, and over a period of time, you know you'd get the hang of it. You do one course on Udemy and you feel, okay, this continuous like online tool is fantastic for me. I can 30 minutes lectures work for me. 1 hour is too much on my time. I can maybe, when I did it on the weekends, I found that I could engage better. When I did it after my work, I was completely spaced out. But you're only going to know all of these things when you try. So experimentation and trying out, using the analogy of clothes or shoes for finding the right fit, I'd say go with that same analogy or fit. People may say anything, right? People may say, oh, these Air Jordans, or these Adidas, new sneakers that have come out, oh, they're amazing, I'm wearing it right now. You tell me the last time you bought a pair of shoes because somebody said buy this. And did the salesman like look at your foot and say, okay, you need a size 9, and then you like, okay, give me a size 9, and you took the size 9 and went home? No, right? You always tried it once at least in the shop, and
Right.
then you made your purchase decision. I'd say, you keep the same approach for all these tools that are there, and it's on your side. It is a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market. Buyer is genuinely the king nowadays, especially after the pandemic, where online working and online learning has got so much more mainstream acceptance. There is a plethora of tools available. Hack. Okay, here's one hack somebody told me.
Ooh, do share.
If there's an online tool, and I don't know, I'm not gonna name any, um, but most of them have live chats and customer service representatives. You can maybe even try negotiating, and I've got that. I've had that done before, not for an online tool, but it was for a not for online learning course. Or was it? But it was definitely for one of the domains and some web tools that I was trying to buy from the website. Like, and I negotiated and I said, look, I'm really interested in this. I want to take this at least for a 1 year subscription, but the cost is so much. Is there any discount you can offer me? And the sales representative said, okay, I have my own discount code of a further 10%, and I'll share it with you. And I used it. So doesn't work always, but okay, if you have that 10 minutes in the world on the live chat, say, I'm really interested in your course, I can see everything, what's the best deal that you can do for me? And if they say no, this is the best discount, there's no, fine. If they say, okay, as an employee discount code, okay, I have something, because even that salesperson might have sales targets, so you're a customer for them, maybe they give you like that 5 or 10% discount code, or something, or a freebie, or I'll bundle this for you. That could also work. So you can try this. It doesn't work all the time, but it does work in some situations also. So
Yeah.
moral of the story: experiment, try it out for those reversible, refundable, free trial versions. If you want a little cherry on the top, maybe just on the chat, ask for the customer service agent if there's something else that they can do, if they can change the terms. Maybe you say, I want a free trial, it's for 14 days, can you extend it for me for a month? I can't learn in 14 days. What's the worst? They'll say no, you're already aware of that, that's printed on the website.
Yeah.
But the upside is that they may actually say, okay, fine, we'll extend it by B, and give that to you. So that's my life hack over here.
Oh, interesting. I think I need to give this a try because there are some very expensive SEO tools that are just not fitting in the budget, but maybe I'll give it a go. Who knows? I'm not really good at haggling, but I did get some valuable advice from a fellow team member, Mandri, who told me whenever you get on a call, record it and then sit afterwards and review the recording and take notes of what you did well, what you didn't do well, what you can improve on. And I'm just saying, on the other side, the sales rep is just like very frantically taking notes as AJ is like, "Can I get a discount? I can't learn this in 14 days." And it's kind of hilarious to me. But that's what they're doing on the other
Yes.
end. That's continuous learning on their end.
And their end, on even your end as well.
Yeah.
Now that you've learned this from my conversation here,
Hmm.
the next step I'd say for you is to, and in the same analogy, is to try it. So when you do it, it'll be reinforced. Okay, it works, it doesn't work. So,
Hmm.
don't leave it at just, it was a nice point that AJ mentioned. Go and find those SEO tools, see if they have that chat bot over there or sales
Oh,
representative, or drop them an email on their customer service, and say, I'm really
hello,
interested.
Semrush.
The price point is a little bit too high for what I want to do because I'm not even sure. Drop them that query and see what it comes. So please convert this passive into active.
Okay, I'll give it a go. Let's see how it goes. I'll give you the update next week. But we are unfortunately running out of time, so gotta wrap up. But before we do, one more Reddit story. So this one, I think it's very, in particular, it's very relevant to the IT industry. But there are lessons that we can learn from this because I'm pretty sure we've gone through our own, variations of the situation this Redditor is going through. So they've said, how do you effectively balance continuous learning and professional growth in the fast evolving IT industry with a full time job and other commitments? Any time management strategies or advice for those looking to upskill while working?
Um, I just bring a very, very, very interesting conversation that I was lucky enough to listen to during my business school. This was the ex CEO of Johnson and Johnson, Mr. Alex Gorsky. 30 years at the company, and he ended up being right at the top. He's not the CEO anymore. He's retired, but or he's yeah he's I don't know if he's retired, but anyway, he's not the CEO anymore. But his
Yeah.
career journey was very interesting, and it has aspects of the answer of what I want to share. Right, he started. Uh, I think he had a military background, and he started as a sales representative, and then he went through marketing and management, and eventually became the CEO. And he explained to us that, think of it, and he questioned us. He said, think of my background. And he asked us as an audience, do you realistically believe, or is it palatable for you, that me not having pharmaceutical or medical professional education, uh, ended up being the CEO of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world? And he posed that as an open question. And he says, if this is baffling you, then it sometimes, he said, it even baffles me. But that's where what he wanted to allude to was that you need to be able to make continuous learning a part of your life. He says, when I was in sales, I would try and understand more about the sales department and how does marketing do. When I was in that, I tried to understand what does HR do and how does it feed into the other side of things. I tried to constantly learn internally how the organization functions rather than keep me at it. And he said he did it he religiously took efforts to do it, and the whole industry's changed. And he gave the example of even COVID, and he said the reason he was able to successfully is the wrong word, but what he said is, uh, how did he manage the company during that period? And he said that he tapped on all his collective knowledge and experience about what he had learned about the organization and the people and the research team and the team of brilliant scientists and doctors that are within it, and how he can manage to bring everybody on board towards steering the company. And all of that skill sets were because at every point that he was investing very proactively in understanding more. He didn't give us any timetable, but or share that this is what I did. But what I took away from it, what I took away from that journey, and which I'd like to share with professionals is, that weekly exercise that I did, that I spoke about, make it a part of your routine. Don't make continuous learning optional. Don't make continuous learning seasonal. Make continuous learning as much as part of your life, as much as you drink coffee, or as much as you have, brush your teeth. And I'm not saying it has to be hours, and it could be minutes,
Yeah.
but make it a part
Like
of your
Duolingo
routine.
takes 10 minutes, like at most.
Exactly.
It's just 10 minutes of your day, you learn something.
You have to make continuous learning a routine. um Jeff Bezos, my I wouldn't say my previous employer, because he is no longer in the management at Amazon. But when we got into Amazon, and when I was fascinated about how has this company gone from, it's one of the success stories of a company being reaching tremendous levels of success in a record period of time. About 20 or 25 years, Amazon's gone from, just starting point to being in one of the top 10 or top five by market value, or whatever those stats. But the timeline is remarkable. Some other companies have taken much more. And how did Amazon do it? Jeff Bezos is famous for, basically, I think he had an idea and a concept, and he said he wanted to make Amazon a part of people's routine. And he said, where people's routines are, Amazon should be there. Whether it's shopping, and whether it's, music, and where is, TV, and what do people do in the day, what's their routine, and we need to be it in some form at every place in the routine, right? um, I'm just juxtaposing here, and therefore continuous learning has to be a part of your routine. um, whether it's journaling, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a formal structured piece of it, but be aware and very consciously make it a part of it. I know Vinay, for example, has set up in his calendar, lunch club conversations that he has. um, a lot of people set up conscious coffee chats, or they have social commitments. And many times these social commitments are although for networking, but is networking not a way also of continuous learning?
It is.
Right, if you
Like,
if you approach it like that, if every conversation, if you think of what can I learn from this conversation, then it's an avenue of continuous learning, right? It doesn't stop there, the learning process. Yeah, you pick something, then you put it into practice. We've already spoken on that. But therefore, to end, and to those people in the dynamic environment, and we speak about IT, what they should, or what anybody should in that context, is you have to make it a part of your routine. It cannot be happenstance, and it cannot be a knee jerk reaction. Oh, today I'm working in my company, and suddenly, we got a memo that these workers are going to be laid off. Oh, so now I need to, I may be laid off in the next cycle. Oh, what can I do? Okay, now let me learn, try not to be reactive, and try not to have a knee jerk kind of a approach to continuous learning. Make it a part of your routine.
absolutely, and that's some fantastic advice. And I'm pretty sure that that would really, really help in taking career much, much, much further, especially if you're just starting out. Make it a part of your routine. And also, if like there is no pressure to spend hours and hours and hours on it daily, you could just like set aside some time that is feasible, that's doable for you, and also reflect on it, keep track of what you're doing or what you're learning. When you're mindlessly scrolling, just utilize whatever's within grasp. grasp. And I think that has been a really fruitful conversation. Honestly, it was such a joy. Like talking to you about continuous learning and growth, AJ. Thank you so much for joining us today. And to our viewers, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, and check out our blogs on our site at capital-placement.com. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you so much, Kailas. It was a pleasure.
See you.